The call came over the cabin speakers no medical professional ever wants to hear. But for Nurse Anya Vance, 30,000 feet over the Atlantic with a warlord bleeding out in first class, it was just the beginning. With no surgical tools, falling oxygen pressure, and a crew begging her to let him die, she had to perform an impossible operation. His survival would rewrite the rules of war. This is the true story of Anya Vance, a battlefield nurse who traded war zones for commercial flights seeking peace. But on Flight 827, she was thrust into a moral abyss. Save the life of a man responsible for countless atrocities, or let him die and potentially ignite a regional war. The choice she made in that pressurized tube didn't just test her oath. It forged the most dangerous alliance in modern conflict. Anya Vance's hands were steady, a trait carved into her by 7 years in military trauma units from Kandahar to Mosul. She had seen wounds that textbooks never described, performed procedures by the glow of headlamps with mortar fire as a soundtrack. She left that life behind for the sterile, predictable calm of commercial aviation, joining the small, unseen army of medical professionals who fly among us, ready for the one emergency in 604 flights. Her new life was a study in controlled variables. 38,000 feet, cabin pressure equivalent to 8,000, reduced oxygen, constant white noise. For most medical volunteers, it's a disorienting challenge. For Anya, it was quiet, too quiet. The phantom buzz of helicopters had been replaced by the hum of engines, a sound she found she could trust. Flight 827 from Istanbul to New York was at cruising altitude over the Atlantic, a 9-hour stretch of darkness and drone. Anya was in seat 12C, economy, headphones on but no music playing. She was always listening. Then the chime, and the captain's voice, calm but tight. "Ladies and gentlemen, if there is a doctor or nurse on board, please identify yourself to a flight attendant immediately." It's a call that sends a specific chill down the spine of every medical professional in the sky. The unspoken contract: you are on vacation, but your oath is not. Anya stood, catching the eye of a flight attendant whose name tag read Maya. The look on Maya's face wasn't just concern, it was pure, undiluted fear. "They said it's in first class," Maya whispered as they hurried forward, bypassing the curtain. "A man, they're saying he's been stabbed." Stabbed on a plane, the word didn't compute. Then Anya saw the scene. 2 other flight attendants were pressed against the galley wall, faces ashen. A massive man in a cheap suit was blocking the aisle to the first-class cabin, his hand inside his jacket. His eyes scanned every passenger who dared to look back. Not security, a bodyguard. Maya spoke to him in a low, urgent tone. "She's a nurse, a combat nurse." The bodyguard's eyes raked over Anya, then he gave a curt nod, stepping aside just enough for her to pass. The first-class cabin was a cocoon of leather and silence, save for the wet, ragged sound of someone trying to breathe through fluid. In seat 1A, a man was slumped, late 40s, with a sharp, brutal handsomeness now gray with shock. His crisp white shirt was a blossoming canvas of crimson, centered just below his sternum. A second man, another guard, was applying frantic, useless pressure with a wad of linen napkins. Anya's training took over. She dropped to her knees in the narrow aisle, her mind automatically cataloging the environment. Terrible lighting, vibrating floor, deafening engine noise just feet away. A diagnostic nightmare. "Let me see," she said, her voice calm, a command. The guard moved his hands. The wound was a narrow, deep puncture, not a slash, a targeted thrust. Anya leaned close, listening. The breath sounds on the left side were faint, then non-existent. Tension pneumothorax. A collapsed lung, with air building up in the chest cavity with nowhere to go, a one-way valve created by the wound. It was crushing his heart and his other lung. At sea level, he had minutes. At cabin pressure, with less oxygen saturating his blood, he had maybe 1. "I need the emergency medical kit." "Now," Anya said, not looking up. The head purser, a man named Gerard with 20 years of experience, had brought the kit. He knelt beside her, his voice a hollow whisper. "Nurse, you need to know who this is." "I don't care. I need a 14-gauge catheter, antiseptic, and tape." "That is Victor Kovac." Gerard breathed the name like a curse. The name meant nothing to Anya in that moment, just noise against the vital calculation in her head. She rummaged through the FAA-approved emergency medical kit. It was tragically basic. an automated external defibrillator, some bandages, a few vials of epinephrine and nitroglycerin, a rudimentary blood pressure cuff, and a simple airway management set. There was no chest decompression kit, no sterile surgical tray, no scalpel. No catheter, nothing for a chest drain, she said, her calm cracking for the first time. Kovach's eyes fluttered open. They were a pale, chilling blue, clouded with pain but intensely focused. He looked at Anya, at her hands covered in his blood, and he understood. He tried to speak, a bubble of blood forming at his lips. Gerard grabbed Anya's arm. "Listen to me. He is the Wolf of the Balkans, an arms dealer, a warlord. Interpol has a red notice for him for crimes against humanity. The man who did this, he might still be on this plane. If Kovach dies here, his faction will blame rivals. There will be reprisals. A war could start over his body." The moral calculus slammed into her. Let nature take its course. Let the monster drown in his own blood. One less monster in the world. The crew's terrified eyes said it all. They were praying for that outcome. But Anya saw the physiology, not the politics. A human body in failure, the oath she took wasn't conditional. "I am not a judge," she said, her voice low and final. "I am a nurse. He is my patient." Kovach's bodyguard, understanding the hesitation, moved. He didn't speak English, but his meaning was clear. He placed his own handgun on the seat tray next to Anya, then pointed at his boss, then at her. A threat and a plea fused into one grotesque gesture. The plane hit a pocket of turbulence, a sudden jarring drop that made the blood-soaked napkins slide to the floor. Kovach gasped, a horrible, sucking sound. His oxygen saturation, if she had a monitor, was plummeting into the 80s. Critical. Anya's mind raced back to her field training. The 1995 case. 2 surgeons over the Indian Ocean had performed a chest decompression with a coat hanger and a water bottle. She had the theory. But here, now. "Get me the sharpest knife from the first-class meal service, a pen, the strongest tape you have, and a bottle of vodka from the cart," Anya commanded, her voice finding its steel. As Gerard scrambled, she looked at Kovach. His blue eyes were locked on hers. There was no gratitude there, only a fierce, animal will to live and a deep, unsettling assessment. In that moment, she wasn't just saving a life. She was entering a contract with a devil, and the terms were being written in blood at 30,000 feet. The tools arrived, a small stainless steel cheese knife, a ballpoint pen she dismantled for its plastic tube, heavy-duty duct tape, and a premium bottle of vodka. It was a parody of a surgical tray. She poured the vodka over the knife and the pen tube, the alcohol stinging the air. No time for proper sterilization. With the bodyguard holding a phone light over her, Anya located the second intercostal space on Kovach's chest, just below the collarbone, the correct spot to relieve the pressure. Her finger traced the rib. The plane vibrated. The engine screamed. One slip, and she could sever a major artery. She placed the tip of the cheese knife against his skin. Kovach didn't flinch. His gaze was unwavering. Anya took a breath, the last breath of her anonymous life. And then she pushed. The resistance was a sickening pop of cartilage and tissue, a sound Anya felt in her own bones. Then, a violent, hissing rush of air from the pen tube she'd taped into the incision. Viktor Kovach's back arched off the seat as the pressure crushing his heart released. He took a desperate, shuddering gulp of air, his blue eyes flying wide, fixed on the woman who had just pulled him back from the void. But it was a temporary fix, a field expedient. The improvised chest seal was already slick with blood and pleural fluid. In the vibrating, noisy cabin, she couldn't hear lung sounds to confirm re-expansion. All she had was the brutal arithmetic of vitals. His pulse was a frantic, thready flutter under her fingers. He was still bleeding internally. "He needs blood. He needs a real chest tube and a surgeon," Anya said, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. "We have to land, now." The bodyguard who had offered the gun, a man named Luka, translated rapidly to Kovach. The warlord's response was a weak but vehement shake of his head. He muttered in Serbian, his voice a wet rasp. "He says no diversion," Luka translated, his own face grim. "The nearest airport is in the Azores, Portuguese territory. He would be arrested the moment the wheels touch." It is a death sentence. Captain Rayner's voice came over the intercom, calling for a private update. Gerard, the purser, his face a mask of conflict, relayed the situation. The cockpit's dilemma was existential. To divert for a medical emergency was a captain's prerogative, but it came at a staggering cost, upwards of $100,000 in fuel, landing fees, and passenger reaccommodation. And now, it also meant delivering a wanted warlord to authorities. The airline's lawyers, the governments involved, it was a geopolitical grenade. Anya leaned close to Kovac. The smell of blood and vodka was overpowering. You will die if we don't land. Your heart is compensating, but it's failing. Do you understand? Kovac's eyes locked on hers. He lifted a trembling, blood-stained hand and pointed weakly at her, then at his own chest, then made a slow, sweeping gesture around the cabin. The meaning was clear. You fix me here. The audacity of it was breathtaking. He was commanding a surgical suite at 30,000 feet. Anya looked at the meager kit. She had no blood for transfusion, no monitors, no suction, no sterile drapes, no assistant. But she had the one thing Kovac understood, absolute necessity. The bleeding hasn't stopped, she said, more to herself. The blade nicked an intercostal artery or the lung itself. I have to open him up and clamp it. Gerard stared at her. With what? A cheese knife and a ballpoint pen. Anya's mind scoured the cabin. I need more light. Get every phone and tablet from the crew. I need hemostats, something to clamp. A metal nail file from an amenity kit. Tweezers, dental floss, unflavored for suture, and more alcohol, everything you have. As the crew scattered, a new horror dawned. The assassin. They were still in the air, trapped with the person who had plunged a knife into Kovac's chest. Was it a rival agent, a betrayed victim? The bodyguards, Luca and his partner, moved with renewed urgency, their eyes scanning the first-class cabin with naked suspicion. The other 5 passengers, a wealthy older couple, a young tech executive, a fashion editor, and a quiet man in glasses, were now prisoners in a flying crime scene. While Luca stood watch, Anya worked. She used vodka to scrub Kovac's chest again, then poured it over her own hands. The scalpel was the same cheese knife, now bent to a better angle. With Kovac's consenting, grim nod, she extended the initial stab wound into a 4-inch incision, following the path of the 5th rib. The flesh parted. The plane hit turbulence, and she braced her elbow against the seat, her other hand holding the skin open with clean napkins. There it was, the damage. The knife had glanced off a rib and pierced the lower lobe of his left lung. A small, pumping artery beside the lung tissue was the source of the steady bleed. She needed to clamp it. The polished metal nail file from a first-class amenity kit was her best hope. She sterilized it, then, using tweezers to hold the vessel, she carefully slid the tapered end of the file alongside it, twisting it to pinch the artery shut. The bleeding slowed to a trickle. Now the lung. She had no surgical stapler, no sealant. She had to close the puncture manually. This was where the dental floss came in. It was strong, sterile in its package, and non-dissolvable, a terrible long-term solution, but the only one she had. With tweezers and superhuman patience, she began to suture the ragged hole in the lung tissue, each tiny stitch a battle against the tremor in her hands and the vibration of the aircraft. Time lost meaning. The cabin became an operating theater lit by the cold glow of a dozen phone screens. The passengers watched, transfixed and horrified. The fashion editor fainted. Kovac, through sheer force of will, remained conscious, his eyes never leaving Anya's face. As she tied off the last knot, Captain Rayner's voice returned. The decision was made. We are not diverting. We are continuing to New York. Air traffic control has been notified of our medical situation. We will have paramedics on standby. Estimated time of arrival, 3 hours and 40 minutes. 3 more hours. Anya looked at her makeshift repair job, at the nail file clamp protruding from Kovac's chest cavity, at the dental floss sutures. It was a time bomb. Infection, the clamp dislodging, a tension pneumothorax recurring on the other side. It was then that Kovac spoke in clear, heavily accented English, each word a labor. You are different. You did not hesitate. It's my job, Anya said, wiping sweat from her brow with her forearm. No, he insisted, his gaze intense. On the battlefield you have seen this, you have done this, in the noise, in the dirt, who are you? Before she could answer, A commotion erupted at the front galley. Luca had the quiet man in glasses pinned against the bulkhead. From the man's sleeve, Luca had pulled a thin ceramic blade, the kind that evades metal detectors. The assassin had been sitting 3 rows back the entire time. The man, whose passport said he was a lecturer from Budapest, didn't struggle. He looked past Luca directly at Kovac and smiled. "He does not get to land," the man said calmly. Then he bit down hard. Cyanide, he was dead in seconds, slumping to the galley floor. The message was horrifyingly clear. This was not a crime of passion or a rival's hit. This was a sanctioned, professional kill, and they had just eliminated the only witness who could say by whom. Panic, cold and silent, swept through the cabin. If one assassin was on board, could there be another? The bodyguards became outright hostile, suspecting everyone. The fragile, focused bubble of Anya's operating theater had burst, replaced by paranoia and dread. Kovac, however, seemed almost calm. He had seen this before. He motioned for Anya to come closer. His voice was a bare whisper now for her alone. "They want me dead before I talk. In New York, I was going to meet someone from your government, to give names, locations." Anya's blood ran cold. He was turning. He was a warlord turning informant. The assassination attempt wasn't about business. It was about silencing a witness to atrocities that reached into the highest corridors of power. "My survival isn't a problem for them," Kovac breathed. "When we land, they will not let me reach the meeting. The men who meet the plane, they may not be paramedics." He was right. If the agency or faction that wanted him dead had the reach to plant an assassin on his flight, they could certainly intercept him on the ground. Her medical heroics would only have delivered him to a different kind of execution. Kovac's hand, cold and weak, closed around her wrist. The touch was shocking. "You have saved my life twice now, once from the knife, once from the sky. There is a debt." He paused, gathering strength. "I have a proposal. You keep me alive until we are on the ground. You stay with me, and I will give you the one thing you want most." Anya frowned. "What could you possibly give me?" Kovac's pale eyes held hers. "A name. The name of the man who ordered the artillery strike on the Médecins Sans Frontières hospital in Korog. The one you could not save. The one that made you leave the war." Anya recoiled as if struck. That memory was a locked box buried deep. The chaos, the smoke, the tiny hand in hers going limp. She had never spoken of it to anyone. How could he know? He saw the shock in her eyes. "I know because I was there. I brokered the sale of those shells, and I know who gave the firing order. It was not who you think." The world tilted. The man on the floor in front of her was no longer just a patient or a monster. He was a key to the central trauma of her life. The oath she had just upheld was now in direct, violent conflict with a thirst for truth she had buried for years. The plane droned on through the black Atlantic night. Behind her, a dead assassin lay in the galley. In front of her, a war criminal turned informant clung to life by her skill and a nail file. And in 3 hours, they would land in a city where unseen forces waited to finish the job. Anya Vance had started the flight as a healer. Now, she was the only thing standing between Viktor Kovac and a secret powerful enough to get them both killed the moment the cabin door opened. The name, he had the name. The 2 words that had haunted her for years, that represented the faceless cause of all her grief and guilt, were sitting on the lips of a dying warlord. Anya's world, which had already been upended at 30,000 feet, now inverted completely. Her oath demanded she preserve his life. Her heart screamed that justice depended on it. And in that impossible convergence, a new, terrifying alliance was born. She leaned in, her voice a low, dangerous whisper only he could hear. "You tell me that name right now." Kovac managed a faint, bloody smirk. "And then you have no reason to keep me alive. You a smart nurse. The name is my insurance. You get me safely off this plane, through the airport, and to my meeting. Then you get your answer." It was a devil's bargain, but he was right. She needed him alive and talking. Every instinct from her military training rebelled. Never negotiate with the enemy, never let them set the terms. But this was different. The enemy was offering a piece of her own soul back. "Fine," she hissed. But you follow my medical orders without question, and your men stand down. We are not creating more panic." She turned to Luca, the bodyguard. "Help me move him. We need to get him flat. 2 first-class seats together, armrests up. Now." Working with a speed born of desperation, they created a makeshift gurney. Anya monitored Kovac's vitals obsessively. His blood pressure was critically low. He was going into hypovolemic shock from the internal bleeding she could only partially control. She needed to replace volume. Intravenous fluids were in the emergency kit, but it was a limited supply. "Captain," she said over the intercom phone Gerard handed her, "my patient is crashing. I need you to make a public announcement. Ask for blood donors, type O negative, universal donors. We are going to do a direct blood transfusion." The silence from the cockpit was profound. What she was asking was unprecedented, fraught with legal and medical peril. But the alternative was watching Kovac die before they landed. Captain Rayner's voice came back, weary but resolved. "We'll make the announcement." Minutes later, the captain's voice echoed through the cabin, explaining the dire need in careful, sanitized terms. The response was slow, then surprising. 3 passengers came forward. A retired army medic, himself O negative, a young woman who donated regularly, and the tech executive who looked pale but determined. Anya set up a crude but effective transfusion chain in the forward galley, using IV tubing and bags from the kit. The retired medic, a man named Joe, assisted with stoic competence. One by one, they donated, their blood flowing through plastic tubes, through a filter, and into Viktor Kovac's veins. It was a bizarre, intimate communion, strangers giving their lifeblood to save a monster, guided by a nurse on a quest for a ghost. As the donated blood slowly stabilized Kovac, a new problem emerged. Gerard pulled Anya aside, his face grave. "We've been in contact with New York authorities. Air traffic control, Port Authority police, the FBI, they're all being oddly vague. They confirm medical services will meet the plane, but they won't give unit numbers or specific names. It's not standard procedure." Luca overheard and grunted in agreement. "They are stalling. They do not want us to know who is coming." Anya's mind raced. If the wrong people met the plane, dressed as paramedics or police, they could whisk Kovac away and he'd disappear forever or be found dead in an alley. Her name and the truth he carried would die with him. She needed an independent channel. She remembered the Aviation Medical Assistance Act, the law that protected good Samaritans like her. But it also meant airlines had direct links to ground-based medical consultation services. She turned to Gerard. "Is there a way to patch me through to the ground medical consult line, not through airline operations, but directly to the hospital-based service?" Gerard nodded. "There's a satellite phone hookup for doctors to consult. I can try." After several tense minutes, Anya was on the line with a calm-voiced emergency physician at Massachusetts General Hospital. She gave a rapid, precise medical report, omitting the patient's identity, focusing on the interventions: improvised thoracostomy, internal suturing, ongoing hemorrhage, direct transfusion. The doctor on the ground was audibly stunned. "You did a thoracotomy with what? And you're maintaining him in flight?" After a pause, he said, "Okay, listen. When you land, you need a trauma team. Not just EMS, you need a surgical team to meet you at the gate. You must insist on this. Do not let him be taken to a local ER. He needs a level 1 trauma center. Directly to the OR, it's his only chance." This was her leverage, a non-negotiable medical demand. She had the authority, as the attending medical professional, to dictate the terms of handoff. She relayed this to Captain Rayner. "Tell them we require a surgical trauma ambulance to gate B42. No police vans, no standard EMS, a mobile surgical unit. If they deviate, we will not offload the patient. We will declare an ongoing in-flight medical emergency." It was a bluff, but it was all she had. It would force whoever was waiting into the open. Either they would comply, revealing themselves as legitimate, or they would have to storm a commercial airliner in front of hundreds of witnesses, an international incident. The final hour of the flight was a cold, silent vigil. Anya sat beside Kovac, monitoring his pulse, checking the makeshift chest seal. The passengers, drained and shell-shocked, stared ahead. The body of the assassin lay covered in a blanket in the rear galley, a grim secret they all now shared. Kovac drifted in and out of consciousness. In a moment of lucidity, he looked at Anya. "You fight for a life you hate," he rasped. "I fight for the truth," she corrected, her voice hollow with fatigue. "Truth is a weapon," he whispered. "It is why they are so afraid." As the plane began its descent into New York, the captain received final landing instructions. He relayed them to Anya, his voice tight. "They've agreed. A surgical ambulance will be at the gate. Port Authority police will secure a corridor. But Anya, they also said there will be federal agents present for the other situation." The other situation, the dead body, the weapons, the international fugitive. The plane touched down with a screech of tires, a jarring return to Earth after the suspended nightmare of the flight. As it taxied, Anya saw the flashing lights through the windows. Dozens of them, police cars, FBI SUVs, and true to their word, a large, boxy ambulance marked Surgical Response Unit. It was a show of force, a containment. The moment the door was opened, a chill breeze swept in. A man in a dark suit with a federal badge climbed aboard first, followed by two trauma nurses in flight suits from the surgical ambulance. The federal agent's eyes swept the scene, lingering on the covered body, then on Kovac, then on Anya. "I'm Agent Harris. FBI will take it from here, ma'am," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Anya planted herself between the agent and the stretcher the nurses were preparing. "Under the AMAA, I am the attending medical provider until I physically hand off care to an equal or higher level of training. This patient is in critical, unstable condition. He goes directly with the surgical team to the OR at the predetermined trauma center. I will be accompanying him to provide continuity of care." Agent Harris's smile didn't reach his eyes. "That's not how this works. He's a person of interest in a federal investigation. He comes with us." "He's a patient in hemorrhagic shock," Anya fired back, her voice rising, drawing the attention of every passenger and crew member. "If you move him to your facility without immediate surgical capability, he will die. That would be negligent homicide, Agent, and I will testify to it." A standoff in the narrow aisle. The trauma nurses waited, caught in the middle. Finally, Harris gave a curt nod. "Fine, you can ride in the ambulance, but my agents ride along. And the moment he is stabilized, he is transferred to our custody." It was a partial victory. She had bought time. As they carefully transferred Kovac to the stretcher and down the jet bridge, Anya stayed glued to his side. In the bright, chaotic fluorescence of the terminal, surrounded by a phalanx of armed agents and medical personnel, Kovac reached up and grabbed her scrubs. He pulled her close, his breath a faint rattle. "The meeting was with a man called Miller in the Department of Justice. He is the only one I trust." His grip tightened. "But they must know, that is why they tried on the plane." Before she could process this, he spoke again, his voice the faintest whisper. "The name you want is not a general. It is a businessman, an American. His company made the shells. He gave the coordinates for a pipeline route." He uttered a single, whispered name. It was a name she recognized, not from wanted posters or news from the front, but from financial magazines, from charity galas, from the very fabric of respectable society. The shock was so total, so profound, it felt like a physical blow. The trauma nurse was urging her into the back of the ambulance. Anya climbed in, her mind reeling. The stretcher was slid in beside her. Agent Harris and another agent climbed in, shutting the doors. The ambulance pulled away from the curb, sirens wailing. As they sped through the tunnel towards Manhattan, Agent Harris looked at her, his expression unreadable. "You did good work up there, Nurse Vance, truly remarkable." He paused. "It's a shame." "What is?" Anya asked, her guard up. "It's a shame you got involved," he said, his hand moving slowly towards his holstered weapon. "Because now you know too much." In the confined, rocking space of the speeding surgical ambulance, surrounded by millions of dollars of life-saving equipment, Anya Vance realized the most critical operation was just beginning. And this time, the threat wasn't a collapsed lung or a bleeding artery. It was the man sitting across from her, whose badge might just be the most effective disguise of all. Time didn't slow down, it crystallized. In the rocking ambulance, with the sirens screaming a cover for any sound, Agent Harris's hand moved toward his gun. Anya's eyes darted from his face to the intravenous line running from a bag of donated blood into Viktor Kovach's arm. She saw the answer not as a weapon, but as a patient's vital sign. His pressures crashing, Anya shouted, lunging not away from Harris, but toward Kovach. Her hand slammed down on the IV line, pinching it shut. The cardiac monitor beside her, which had been beeping a steady, weak rhythm, instantly shrilled a high-pitched alarm. The flatline tone filled the cramped space. The trauma nurse and the other agent jerked in surprise, their attention ripped from the confrontation to the dying man. Harris hesitated, his hand frozen halfway to his holster. "He's coding, get the defibrillator pads on him," Anya commanded, her voice the absolute authority of the trauma bay. She began pounding on Kovach's chest, her compressions vigorous, performative. "You," she barked at the stunned second agent. "Bag him, now." In the chaos of a genuine, or convincingly faked, medical crisis, protocol took over. The trauma nurse scrambled for the defibrillator. The other agent, on autopilot, grabbed the bag valve mask. Harris was momentarily sidelined, his lethal intent disrupted by the overwhelming urgency of saving a life, the very life he'd been about to make irrelevant. As the nurse charged the paddles, Anya locked eyes with Harris over Kovach's still form. Her message was clear: "Kill me now, in front of witnesses, and this man dies too. Your entire operation collapses." The flatline alarm was her shield. "Clear," the nurse yelled. They shocked Kovach. His body jerked. The monitor showed a weak, stumbling rhythm return, not a real cardiac arrest, but a severe arrhythmia she had induced by cutting off his blood supply and pounding his sternum near the nail file clamp. It was a monstrous risk, but it had worked. Harris slowly lowered his hand, his face a mask of cold fury. He understood he'd been outmaneuvered, for now. The ambulance screeched to a halt. The back doors flew open. They were at the entrance to the Level 1 Trauma Center, a whirlwind of waiting surgeons, nurses, and orderlies. Kovach was whisked away on the gurney, disappearing through swinging double doors into the bright, sterile chaos of the operating room. Harris grabbed Anya's arm as she tried to follow. "Not you, you're done. I need to give the surgical report." The clamp in his chest cavity, the sutures. "They'll figure it out, you're coming with me." He marched her through a side door, away from the ER, into a bleak, windowless administrative corridor. They entered a small, empty office. He pushed her into a chair. "Wait here." He left, locking the door from the outside. Anya was alone, her mind racing. The name Kovach had whispered was a seismic truth she couldn't yet process. She had to assume the room was bugged, monitored. She sat perfectly still, conserving her energy, assessing her options. They were few. About 20 minutes later, the door opened. But it was Harris. It was an older man in an impeccably tailored but conservative suit. He had the weary eyes of a lifelong bureaucrat and the calm bearing of someone who wielded real power quietly. "Nurse Vance," he said, his voice soft. "My name is Miller. I believe you were told to ask for me." This was Kovach's contact, the man from the Department of Justice. He was here, which meant Harris either worked for him or Harris's faction had lost control of the situation. "Where is Agent Harris?" Anya asked, not moving from the chair. "Agent Harris has been recalled to headquarters for a debriefing," Miller said, sitting down opposite her. He overstepped. Dramatically, "We are not in the business of executing nurses in ambulances, no matter how inconvenient their knowledge." "What business are you in?" Anya shot back. "The messy one," Miller sighed. "Viktor Kovach was offering us a treasure trove of information on Eastern European arms networks in exchange for a new identity. The attempt on his life means someone inside our intelligence apparatus is compromised. Your improvisation has given us a chance to salvage this." He leaned forward. "The name he gave you, on the plane, I need you to tell me what it is." Here it was, her only currency. "Why? So you can bury it deeper." "So I can know who I'm fighting," Miller said. and for the first time she heard genuine frustration in his voice. That hospital bombing was a tragedy that destabilized a region and derailed peace talks. If an American citizen was involved for commercial reasons, that is an abomination. But I need proof. A dying warlord's whisper is not proof. Anya studied him. Her instincts, honed in triage tents where liars came begging for morphine, told her he was telling a partial truth. He wanted the name, but he might not be able or willing to act on it. She made a decision. "I'll give you the name," she said, "after I see Kovac alive in recovery, after I get assurances that he gets his deal, and after I get a guarantee of immunity for myself and the crew of Flight 827 for anything that happened in that airspace." Miller almost smiled. "You drive a hard bargain for someone with no cards." "I have the only card that matters," Anya said, "the truth, and you need it to clean your own house." Miller nodded slowly. "All right, come with me." He led her to the surgical intensive care unit. Through a glass window, she saw Viktor Kovac, unconscious, a ventilator tube in his mouth, surrounded by monitors and pumps. A surgeon was speaking with Miller's aide. The report was cautious but positive. The nail file clamp had been successfully removed, the lung repaired, the dental floss sutures replaced. He was critical but stable. He would live. Miller handed her a secured tablet. On it was a draft agreement granting Kovac protective custody and witness relocation in exchange for full cooperation. It was real. "Your turn," Miller said. Anya took a deep breath. She spoke the name. The respectable, philanthropic, untouchable name. Miller's face went pale, then grim. He didn't look surprised. He looked resigned, as if she'd confirmed his deepest suspicion. "I see," was all he said. He walked a few paces away, pinching the bridge of his nose. When he turned back, his demeanor had changed. The bureaucrat was gone, replaced by something harder. That proof, it will be difficult to obtain, dangerous. "I don't care," Anya said. "You have your lead, now honor the rest, the immunity." Miller produced another document, an affidavit under the Aviation Medical Assistance Act, stating that all actions taken by Anya Vance and the crew of Flight 827 were performed in good faith during a life-threatening medical emergency. It would shield them from civil or criminal liability for the unorthodox procedures, the confinement, even the death of the assassin. She signed. As she handed it back, Miller looked at her with something akin to respect. "What will you do now, Nurse Vance? You can't go back to your old life. Too many people know your face, the wrong people." Anya looked through the glass at Kovac, the monster, the informant, her patient. "I don't know." A week later, the news cycles had moved on. A vague story about an in-flight medical diversion and a fatality attributed to a pre-existing condition. No mention of warlords or assassins. Anya was in a safe house, a bland apartment in Virginia. She was watching a press conference on television. The respectable man whose name she had spoken was announcing a new global health initiative. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "He is awake, he asks for you." It was from Miller. She was taken to a high-security medical facility. Kovac was propped up in bed, looking gaunt and pale, but his blue eyes were as sharp as ever. The room was empty save for them. "Nurse," he rasped. "Patient," she replied, not smiling. "Miller told me you held up your end. You gave the name. He told me you've started talking, giving them everything." Kovac nodded weakly. "A new life. In some desert somewhere, it is more than I deserve." He paused, studying her. "And you, what do you deserve?" "Answers," Anya said. "I got one, it doesn't feel like enough." "Justice is a ghost," Kovac said. "You chase it, but you can only ever hold the weapons that failed to stop it." He gestured to the side table. On it was a simple, sealed envelope. "For you, a down payment on my debt." Anya picked it up. Inside was not money, but information, a list. Names, dates, flight numbers. It was a ledger of shipments, the very arms shipments he had brokered, including the one that supplied the artillery that hit her hospital. "The proof Miller needs is in a private server vault in Zurich," Kovac said. "The access codes are there, the contracts, the wire transfers. the order with the coordinates signed by his hand. It was the weapon, the real weapon. "Why give this to me?" Anya asked, her throat tight. "Because you looked at me and saw a life to save, not a target to eliminate," Kovac said, his gaze unwavering. "In my world, that is a power stronger than any gun. Take it, use it, become something they cannot predict." Anya left the room, the envelope burning in her hands. Miller was waiting in the hall. "He gave you something," Miller stated. "He did. And will you give it to me?" Anya looked at him, then at the envelope. She thought of the charity galas, the philanthropic smiles, the children who died in rubble while the man who ordered it drank champagne. She made a choice. "No," she said, "I'm giving it to the International Criminal Court and to every major news outlet. Simultaneously, you can have a copy, but you don't get to control it." Miller sighed, but he didn't argue. He understood. She was operating by a new set of rules now. What will you do after? They will come for you. Anya allowed herself a small, cold smile. "Let them try. I have a very unique set of references, and I hear there's a growing market for medical professionals who aren't afraid of altitude or ambiguity." 6 months later, a seismic scandal erupted. The respectable businessman was indicted for war crimes. The network began to unravel, and in a private clinic in Geneva, a new security consulting firm opened its doors. Its specialty, crisis medical response and risk mitigation for clients operating in complex environments. The lead consultant was a woman with a formidable reputation for working miracles under impossible conditions. Her first and most loyal client was a reformed arms dealer, now in witness protection, who insisted on retaining her services for all his medical needs. He paid a retainer that could only be described as extravagant. Anya Vance never did return to the calm of commercial aviation. She found a different kind of peace in the eye of the storm, wielding a stethoscope and a truth that could topple empires. The nurse who saved a monster didn't just rewrite the rules of war. She started a whole new game, and for the first time, she was writing the rules herself. The story of Anya Vance and Viktor Kovac lives in that gray space between the oath we swear and the justice we seek. It's a reminder that the most critical tools in a crisis aren't always in the kit. They're in the character of the person who opens it. She wasn't just a nurse on a plane. She was a force of nature who redefined what it means to be a guardian in the chaos. We started with a simple, terrifying question. What would you do? Save a monster to save yourself, or let a world burn for a principle? Anya's answer was to reject the choice entirely. She saved the monster, armed herself with his truth, and then used that weapon to dismantle the system that created them both. In doing so, she proved that absolute competence is its own form of power, a power that can humble kings and rewrite destinies. This tale, while fictional, is built on a bedrock of real, chilling facts. In-flight medical emergencies happen once every 604 flights. The cabin is a hostile environment for care, a pressurized tube with less oxygen, deafening noise, and tragically limited equipment. Yet every day, doctors, nurses, and physician assistants step forward, protected by laws like the Aviation Medical Assistance Act, to perform miracles with whatever is at hand. They are the unseen guardians in the sky, and their decisions, made in that vibrating, confined space, can and do alter the course of lives and sometimes history. Anya and Kovac alliance, born from a cheese knife and a secret, shows us that loyalty isn't about blind allegiance. It's earned in the moment when someone sees your raw, struggling humanity and chooses to fight for it, even when the world says you don't deserve the breath in your lungs. It's the understanding that sometimes, to heal a wound, you have to first expose the poison. So what do you think? Did Anya make the right call by saving Kovac, or did her pursuit of a personal truth compromise her moral center? Could a real medical professional have pulled off such an impossible series of procedures, or does this story stretch the limits of belief too far? Let me know your verdict in the comments below. If this story of impossible choices and unwavering skill gripped you, please hit that like button. It truly helps the channel grow. Share this with a friend who loves a narrative where the hero's greatest weapon isn't a gun, but a steadfast heart and a brilliant mind. And don't forget to subscribe. We dive deep into the tales of competence under pressure, the hidden histories, and the real-world science behind the fiction every single week. Thanks for listening.